All right, Shabbos say good morning, a good tevach, guten erev b'dikas chametz. Baruch Hashem, what a schus we have to be able to lead up to these days. You feel the excitement in the air, no? With b'dikas chametz, we have the opportunity to look for all the stuff that's in a state of disrepair. We have a chance to look for all the things that are broken, and Baruch Hashem, purge them from our lives. You feel the excitement about that opportunity for cathartic change rapidly approaching in just a little bit over 12 hours from now. B'sha'a tova u'metzlachas. And what better way to prepare Meretz Hashem for that avoda than with our best friend in the world, Maseches Bava Metzia. The difference of the daf is you have different best friends at different times, so it's hard. It's hard to stay in one relationship, for a long amount of time. But right now, Maseches Bava Metzia, at least the Parak Hazav, best friend in the world. So also we begin by thanking all of our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Nisan, Said and Simahaikin, sponsoring all the Shirman Drushos this month, as an expression of their Akaras HaTov to Hashem, for all of his Nisim and Niflaos. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu continue to bestow his Rachmanos on us, redeem all of the hostages, bring complete Hatzlacha to Eretz Yisrael and to Am Yisrael, and Le'ilui Nishmas Yerachmiel Bak's father, Martin Bak Matel Ben Chaim Leib HaKoin Zichron Livracha. A week of learning sponsors, the Ram and Bravo families, Le'ilui Nishmas, their father, Mordechai Ben Yitzchak. We open on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Shamal Havan Aliyah, and the family Einacham. And of course, we always dedicate all of our learning in the schos of each and every one of our hostages. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring them back to their families, b'shalom and b'karov, and in the schos of the Hatzlacha of our precious soldiers, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should allow them to see Hashkacha and to see Hatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yedehem. With that, let us begin. Today's daf is Nun Gimel 53, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem. We are picking up on Nun Beis Amud Beis. Nun Beis Amud Beis 52b. Let's pick up at the two dots. So a lot to do today in Meretz Hashem. So here we go. V'nosno l'maiser sheni ve'eno choshesh she'eno ela nefesh ra. So as I remember again, the Gemara was talking about in yesterday's daf. We introduced the really riveting topic, a really fascinating topic about the valuation of eroded coins. Remember again, so one of the major distinctions between coinage, Bisman Gemara, and now is that their coins were actually made with precious metals. So what happens? Over time and over use, obviously the coin itself erodes and it becomes worth less. So the shayla then that we saw in yesterday's Mishnah was, so how do you exactly deal with the valuation of those types of coins? One of the interesting things that came up in the the Mishnah, is that the Mishnah said that you could use these coins, eroded coins, for Meiser Sheni redemption. Remember again a word about Meiser Sheni. Meiser Sheni, right, is a tithe that you separate from your produce. Who eats Meiser Sheni? Who eats it? I get to eat it, the owner of the produce. One caveat, where do you have to eat it? In Yerushalayim Yirah Kodesh. If you have, Baruch Hashem, Kenai Nahara, too much Meiser Sheni, we should have such a problem like this, then what can you do? Transfer sanctity of the Meiser Sheni onto coins, take the coins to Yerushalayim, and ultimately again, take the coins to Yerushalayim, and then go ahead and buy produce, buy food. There you could spend, what can you spend the money on? You can spend it on whatever you want, but it's got to be food. It's got to be food in Yerushalayim. Okay, so now the Mishnah is telling me that I could use one of these eroded coins for redemption purposes from Meiser Sheni. So here we go. Now the reason for all of this, the Mishnah said, is because really an eroded coin is fine. I was going to say, it makes sense. Think about this for just a moment. I don't know the erosion rates. I forgot to Google this, erosion rates in the times of the Gemara, right? But Lamaisa, one would imagine money's changing hands somewhat frequently. It's got to erode pretty quickly. Right, that must be the way that it is. So the Gemara says it is totally common, right, to have these type of coins, and only someone who was difficult wouldn't accept these kind of coins. So that the lashon of the Mishnah was she'eno ela nefesh ra. A person who doesn't go ahead and accept these kind of coins, he's a nefesh ra. And I both say it's actually a pretty strong word. Who would ever want to be called a nefesh ra? Okay, we'll discuss a little bit more. Says the Gemara. Papa says, Shmamina, Hayman demokim azuzi mikri nefesh ra. So Papa says, you see from here that someone who is too particular with this type of coins is called a nefesh ra. Kol nefesh ra. So the Gemara says, v'hani mili disagilu. Now, obviously, what's the caveat to this? The caveat to this is the assumption is, obviously, there's different levels of erosion. If a coin erodes to such a point that it just is not usable, then obviously no one is expected to go ahead and use it. I will say no different than if somebody comes to you with a $50 bill that's ripped into two and says, "Here," right? And says, "I think the halacha is right. If you have a money that's taped together, I think it's still usable currency, right? It is, right? But at the same time, if somebody comes to you with two halves of 50 and says, "Here," you have every right to say, "You know what? I'm not. No, I'm not. Either you could tape it up, or just go ahead and give me a different form of currency." So the Gemara says, if obviously the coin has eroded to such a point where again it just wouldn't be usable in regular transactions, then everyone has a right to say no thank you. But assuming that it has the ability to be used, if you don't accept it, ultimately again, you're a nefesh ra. So I'll say it's a fascinating terminology to use for someone, who doesn't want to accept coinage in the marketplace. Okay, interesting. So let's go back to So we'll say this supports the view of Chizkiah. Damar Chizkiah, ba lepotra, potra b'shavia. So we'll say Chizkiah says like this: if you have one of these eroded coins, and you want to go ahead and, let's say, cash in this coin for other coins, so ultimately, again, it is traded in at its actual value. Right, potra b'shavia. It is traded in at its actual value. Rashi says lefi chasrona v'lo yirme es chaver the potra b'yava. So I will say. So for example, if you have a coin, right? If you have, let's say, I don't know. Let's just keep it easy. You have a zuz, and for argument's sake, let's say a zuz is worth 10 prutos, which it's not. But I'm just using it for illustration purposes. And your zuz is eroded. So Rabbi say, if you're exchanging it for other denominations of coinage or other denominations of money, you have to go ahead and exchange it at its actual value. Actual value is determined by value minus erosion, which makes sense. If you're exchanging the money, then have to go ahead and exchange it at actual value. Now I'll say this is fascinating. However, if you are going ahead and using it for Meiser Sheni redemption, then what? You could use the money not at its current value, but at its what we'll call currency value or face value. In other words, you look at what the coin is. So let's say this coin is a zuz, but it's not really worth a zuz, right? Because it's eroded. So it's a zuz, let's say, minus 2 prutos. So if you're exchanging the money itself, you have to exchange it at what we'll call real value. Real value, right? Real value is face value minus erosion. For Meiser Sheni redemption, you could go ahead and use it at face value. Fascinating. The Gemara says, "My kamar." Hachikamar is what it means to say. Hachikamar. Afa piki shabala parta b'shavya kishu mechala biyafa. So I'll say it's very simple. If you're actually using this kind of like in a currency transaction, you're exchanging this coin for other coins, you have to exchange it at real value. But if you're going ahead, meaning minus erosion, but if you're using the money for Meiser Sheni redemption, then halacha l'maisa, you could go ahead and redeem Meiser Sheni with this coin with face value. In other words, you don't have to take into account erosion. So we'll say, which is really fascinating, which says that Meiser Sheni redemption essentially takes place at the face value of the coin, even if the coin is not actually worth that amount. Gemara says, really, lememra, the Sarah Chizkiah, the mezalzel of Meiser Sheni. So I both say this sounds like Chizkiah says that you can treat Meiser Sheni almost like in a little bit of a disparaging fashion. In other words, I will say, not that you're disparaging Meiser Sheni, but the idea that money that is eroded, right? You have to, if you're using it in a currency transaction, you have to take into account erosion. Yet that same money, if you're using it for Meiser Sheni redemption, you could use it at face value. You don't have to take into account erosion. So it sounds like you're treating Meiser Sheni as less than a currency transaction. That's strange. Chizkiah said, Meiser Sheni shein bo shava pruta. So this is actually a very interesting case. What happens if you have Meiser Sheni that is not worth a pruta? So I have Meiser Sheni produce. It's worth less than a pruta. So we'll say, what's the problem? The problem, of course, is because it's worth less than a pruta, you can't redeem it onto money. So in this case over here, I have produce worth less than a pruta, and I want to transfer the sanctity of this Meiser Sheni produce, which is worth less than a pruta, onto money. The problem is, Rabbi say, you can't do a transference pachos mi pruta, because such a transaction like that is absolutely meaningless. So what do? This is fascinating. Omer, Huvechumsho mechula al ma'os harishonos, lefishi afshar lo li adam letzamse ma'osav. Shabbos, listen to this. Now, one more piece of information over here. When you redeem your own Meiser Sheni, Shabbos, say what else you have to pay, right? Well, how does redemption work? It's face value. Face value, in other words, value of the produce plus a chomesh, plus an additional fifth. Of course, that fifth is only paid when? Only paid when? Only paid when? If you are redeeming your own Meiser Sheni, we had this last week, if you're redeeming your own Meiser Sheni, but if someone else is redeeming your Meiser Sheni, or you're redeeming someone else's Meiser Sheni, only value of the produce, no fifth. So I'll say, so watch this case. I have Meiser Sheni that is worth less than a pruta. So I'll say, so now I want to transfer sanctity onto money. The problem is, I can't do that as a transaction, because you can't do a transaction less than a pruta. So what can you do? You could redeem this with monies that were already used to redeem other Meiser Sheni. So for example, let's say, again, I will say, I redeemed my first batch of Meiser Sheni, it was worth $100. So I now have $100 sitting on my dresser, ready to be taken to Yerushalayim to be used for food. Now I realize I have a little bit more Meiser Sheni. I have less than a pruta's worth of Meiser Sheni. Gemara says, no problem. Just redeem that onto the $100. Now why? Because the way it works with Meiser Sheni is, no one ever redeems Meiser Sheni in an exact fashion, right? You always add on a little bit more money than the value of the produce. So you see from here that you always have a cushion. You always have a financial cushion. Therefore, because I have this Meiser Sheni that's worth less than a pruta, I divide the Meiser Sheni, the additional fifth on that, I could redeem that on the $100 that is sitting on my dresser. Now both say, what do you see from here? What do you see from here? You see that Meiser Sheni is treated with incredible financial sanctity, right? Why? Because we even redeem Meiser Sheni for more than its value. For more than its value. So therefore, again, what's the problem? The problem is Chizkiah is saying that I could go ahead and redeem Meiser Sheni with an eroded coin, and I could use the actual face value instead of actual value of that coin. So how does this stem? To which the Gemara says, you're right, the Gemara says, my biyafa. By the way, I'll also point out this idea of redeeming Meiser Sheni for a little bit more than its value is also just a beautiful approach when it comes to Yiddishkeit. The idea is in our Yiddishkeit to always give, always do, not just, I don't mean just giving money, always do like a little bit more. Whatever the expectation is, the way a Yid works is expectation plus. Whatever it is, and it could be in my tzedakah, it could be in my meiser, and it could be just in any form. It could be in my tefillah, in my Torah. Whatever the expectation I set for myself, you always add on a little bit. The lashon over here is so beautiful. She'i afshar lo li adam litzamtzem. I'll just leave out with that most of. It's impossible to be exact. Why I both say, sometimes we set an expectation for ourselves, which is incredibly beautiful and wonderful. But who says that expectation is right? Maybe the expectation should be a little bit higher. So therefore, again, the good news is whatever expectation is, just push a little bit more. Why? Because whatever you think you can do, you're probably capable of doing a bit more. Whether it's in my tzedakah, whether it's in my tefillah, whether it's in my Torah, whether it's in my chesed, always add on a bit more. So what do you do with Chizkiah? My biyafa. The Gemara says, you're right. What does yafa mean? B'toras yafa. So inachinam rabosai, what Chizkiah is saying is, what does it mean? That Allah chalamaysa, we go ahead and, my biyafa b'toras yafa. So also inachinam, the Gemara says, what does it mean? Biyafa Rashi says, ki'iluhu yafa. Ultimately, Chizkiah agrees that we actually, when redeeming Meiser Sheni on an eroded coin, we don't use face value, rather we use actual value. So that's what Chizkiah is coming on. So essentially, Abosai, what Chizkiah is saying is both in financial transactions as well as with Meiser Sheni, we're going to use actual value of the coin and not face value. The Gemara says, "Ditrei zili lo mezalzalin bei," because Abosai, ultimately, again, we are not going to go ahead and treat Meiser Sheni I didn't skip. Good. The Trey Zili, Loma Zazalina, because it will say ultimately again, we're not going to go ahead and treat Meiser Sheni lightly in two ways. In other words, they're already allowing you to take this Pachos Mipruta and go ahead and redeem it onto monies that were already established as Meiser Sheni. So we're going to let you do that. We're not going to also let you use an eroded coin at face value when it's not actually worth that much. Beautiful. All right, let's go back to Gufa. Amr Chizkiah. Stay for say what comes out over here so far, according to Chizkiah, is that halacha l'maisa, according to Chizkiah at least, halacha l'maisa, when it comes to the use of an eroded coin, both for financial transactions as well as for Meiser Sheni, we're going to look at actual value as opposed to face value. Beautiful. So Gufa, let's go back to Amr Chizkiah. Meiser Sheni, I just want to point out also, how ridiculously amazing is it that we are learning a Gemara of Meiser Sheni on Erev Pesach? Erev Pesach. They will say, do you know when people would bring their Meiser Sheni to Yerushalayim? You're a farmer. When would you bring your Meiser Sheni? On the Regalim. Because you were going anyway. I mean, I'm sure people did make special trips for Meiser Sheni, also depending maybe on how much produce you had, what type of produce you had. But I would say, but bepashtos, the times for Meiser Sheni were the Regalim. So we'll say, how absolutely incredible is that? That Allah Chalamaysa, again, we're learning the Gemaras of Meiser Sheni on Erev Yom Tiv. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows: Kufa Amr Chizkiah, Meiser Sheni Shebo Shava Pruta. So now the Gemara just come back and revisiting the previous case. If you have Meiser Sheni that's not worth a Pruta, Omer Hu v'chumsha mechula amos harishanos lefishi av shaloli adam letzam seima osa. So most of the Gemara is giving me this model, right? This model where I have Meiser Sheni that is worth less than a Pruta. So it's worth less than a Pruta. So because it's worth less than a Pruta, therefore what? I can't engage in an actual act of redemption for this particular Meiser Sheni. But what can I do? I can redeem it with Meiser Sheni money. What's Meiser Sheni money? Money that was already used for the redemption of other produce. The assumption is you always redeem Meiser Sheni more than its actual value. Therefore, there's a financial cushion. There's money left over. I redeem the Pachos Mishaver Pruta of Meiser Sheni that I have now on that other money. So the Gemara says, Meisvei. The Gemara says, 1 second. Good. Meisvei hatruma. So says this is actually a great braysa. Hatruma v'abikurim chayav nalen misa the chomesh. So we'll say truma, which is the portion given to the kohen. Bikurim, first fruits. You are chayiv, Rabbi say misa. So one is chayiv. What does this mean? If a non-kohen, if a non-kohen goes ahead and eats, or for that, by the way, this is either a non-kohen or a kohen that's tamei, eats truma or eats bikurim intentionally, there's a death penalty. The chomesh, and Rabbi say so again. Chomesh is same. If a non-kohen eats truma or bikurim by accident, you pay back principal plus a fifth. Okay, top of Nun Gimel 53a, Vasrun Lizarim, and these items are not permitted to be consumed by non-Kohanim, Vehein Nichse Kohen. And I both say they have the property of the Kohen. Now, what does it mean, this property of the Kohen? That if a Kohen wants to go over to a woman and says, Hariat Mikudeshas Li Bibikurim Elu, right, it works. Hariat Mikudeshas Li B'Trumazo, right, it works. It's his, so if he wants to use it to affect Kiddushin, it's his money. Va'olin be'acharumeya, and I both say again, Shum and Bikurim, if they get mixed in with other stuff, they are batal. They are nullified in a ratio of 100 to 1. Utu'unan rechitzas yadayim, and I will say before you eat them, before you Truma and Bikurim, you have to wash your hands. Right, the Harav Shemesh, and ultimately again you also need Harav Shemesh. I will say, so remember again, Harav Shemesh means you can't be a Tvul Yom. That even if you go out, if you're tummy, you go to the mikvah by day, you can't consume them until the sun goes down. All right, Hari Elu B'Truim Bikurim. So I will say all of these halachas apply to Truma and Bikurim. Masha'in Kein B'Meiser, but it doesn't apply to Meiser Sheni. Okay, so the Gemara says, "My masha'inkin b'meiser." What is that talking about? What does this mean? It doesn't apply to meiser. What is that specifically referring to? All right, a lot to go into over here. Fine. So let's go. I define. So I'll say I'll actually point out it's actually okay. Just because also it's in Yomi Yoma. Take a look at Rashi just very quickly. Tu'unin rechitzas yadayim. So the Brisa says that you have to wash your hands before you truma and rikurim. So he writes leperos shayadayim tmeos shnios gazu bahen rabbanon v'sheni osa shlishi b'truma ma she'ein kein b'maiser she'ein ta'on rechitzas yadayim leperos. So we'll say, so now listen to this. In general, you have to wash your hands before going ahead and partaking of truma fruit. Why? Because Rabbi say the way it works is if your hands are tamei and they go ahead and they touch truma, so hands are a sheni, second degree truma, midrabanan, but a sheni could make a shlishi by truma. But that doesn't apply by meiser sheni. It doesn't apply by Meiser Sheni. Masha'in came a Meiser. Shein Tom Rechitzes Adam Leperos. Damar Mar Hanot Al Yad of Leperos. Hare Zemegase Haruach. See, Rabbi say in general, a person does not go ahead and today, right? So we don't wash our hands before we eat fruit. Even though again, I will say, but one second, but wet hands, if they're tummy, could convey tumah. We don't do that. They'll say there's only one time of year we do that, and that is the Leil HaSeder. The Leil HaSeder. That's one of the reasons, right? One of the reasons, ultimately, again, for orchatz, is because of karpas. We're going to go ahead and eat a vegetable that comes in contact with water, and even though normally throughout the year we do not wash before partaking of an item that comes in contact with liquid, it's not that we're makbid on this, Leil HaSeder, but again, everything is kadesh yishalu hatinoko. So we'll say, how incredible is that? How incredible is that? That a reference ultimately, again, to Orchatz, a reference to the Seder on Erev Pesach. So two references, Meiser Sheni, which would have normally been taken to Yerushalayim on Erev Yom Tiv. Now, again, a veiled reference to Orchatz. Something big is happening. We'll say, okay, let's go weiter. So Lab Michlal, so my Shein came a Meiser. So we'll say, ultimately, again, so what does it mean? What does it mean that these halachas don't apply to Meiser Sheni? Lav Michlal, the Meiser Batal Baruba. So we'll say it must be like this. What do we say? If you have a case, of truma, or you have a case of bikurim that get mixed in with something, so then what's the halacha? The halacha is they're batal in a mixture of 100 to 1, right? So we'll say this is actually important to know. It will be important to know. You have Kohanic relatives, right? So when your Kohanic relatives come over, and they, first of all, when they come over, ask them not to bring their truma, because it's only asking for trouble, right? So keep your truma at home. They might be the from relatives who don't trust your kashrus, right? So they got to bring their own truma. So what happens? So you say, no, don't bring your truma. Let's say your Kohanic relative decides to bring his truma. What happens? He drops his truma something, his truma, apple into your fruit salad. So we'll say, so now what do I do? So the good news is truma is batal in a ratio of 100 to 1. So if you have 100 parts, regular fruit salad, to 1 part truma, you're good to go. So the Gemara says this doesn't apply by meiser. So what does it mean it doesn't apply by meiser? So maybe what it means to say is like this. By meiser, if you have meiser sheni that gets mixed in with other, we'll call it chulin items, meiser is batal barov. It's batal barov in a simple majority. V'misa, now if that's true, that meiser is batal barov. V'misa, techiskia, havi le davar sheish lamatirin. V'chal davar sheish lamatirin afilu be'elef lo batal. The Rabbi said, now watch this. Excuse me. Now according to Chizkiah, now remember again, what did Chizkiah say? Chizkiah said that halacha l'maisa, if you have, there is a way to go ahead and redeem meiser sheni, even pachos mishav pruta, right? How do you do it? Redeem it onto already established meiser sheni money. Now I will say, so according to Chizkiah, halacha l'maisa, if you have a mixture of meiser sheni that fell into chulin, it should never be batal. Why shouldn't it be batal? I will say now again, we had a lot of stuff being thrown at us today. The concept of bittul in general only applies to in a situation where there is no other remedy. Right? In general, we don't like to rely on nullification. So when there is no other way, however, to go ahead and take care of the item, so rely on bittul. There's a concept called davar sheish lamatirin. What's davar sheish lamatirin? Something that is prohibited now, but will become permitted later on. So we'll say, so by the way, the paradigmatic example of this is, if you have an egg, right? This is actually where it comes up. You have an egg. What's the halacha with an egg? Chicken lays an egg on Yom Tiv. What's the halacha? It's no lud. You're not allowed to use it. You're not allowed to use it. What happens if that egg gets mixed in with 1,000 other eggs? Right? It's actually good to know, I will say, because the amount of egg purchases that happen on Pesach or before Pesach, it's astounding. It's astounding, right? Every egg farmer should become the greatest Ohev Yisrael, right? The dozens upon dozens of eggs that occupy space in Jewish homes, right, leading up to Pesach, is incredible. So now what happens? I have an egg that falls into a mixture of 1,000 other eggs. What's the halacha? It's not batal, right? Why is it not batal? Because the egg that was born on Yom Tiv becomes mutter right after Yom Tiv. That's called the davar sheish lo matirin. When something is going to become permitted at a later time, we don't rely on the mechanism of bittul. So therefore the Gemara says like this: if you have a little bit of meiser sheni, that gets mixed in with chulin, it should never be batal. Why should it never be batal? Because according to Chizkiah, there's a way to remedy the mixture. How do you remedy the mixture? Redeem that bit of Meiser Sheni on already established Meiser Sheni money, because there's always room. You always redeem Meiser Sheni for more than its value. So just redeem the Meiser Sheni that got mixed in on the money that shall have already a Meiser Sheni, and Shalom al Yisrael. You shouldn't have to rely on bittul. The Gemara says, "Umimai timashe enki ma'meiser debatal baruba." How do you know when we say that that what applies to bikurim and truma doesn't apply to meiser? How do you know that it's talking about bittul barov? Tilma lo batal klal. Wow. Maybe what it means to say is like this. Maybe what it means to say is that halacha l'maisa, that meiser sheni is never batal at all. Maybe that's what it means. Meiser sheni is just never batal. It doesn't matter, just never batal. So the Gemara says, to which the Gemara says, Lo matzes amrit hachi, delegabe truma, chumri de truma katani, kuli de truma lo katani. The Gemara says no, because it doesn't make any sense. Because the Mishnah, is coming to create a contrast. It's coming to create a contrast between the chumras of truma and ultimately, again, the kulas of meiser sheni. So therefore, again, I will say, would it make sense to say that truma is batal in a ratio of 100 to 1, and meiser sheni is never batal at all? That doesn't make any sense. So Gemara says, "Vaha katani v'hei nichse koin." But one second, there is a kula there. What's the kula? The kula is that truma is considered to be the property of the kohen. So that is a kula. That is a kula. V'akatani right v'hei nichse koin. Lo salai the sanya behedja meiser sheni batal baruba. No, the Gemara says you can't say that. Why? Because we say explicitly. There's a brayso about say meiser sheni is batal barov. So I will say, by the way, these are also just good little Talmudic facts. It's kind of like this is what you use your notebooks for, the margins of your Gemara, these facts. Right? So I will say, so now we know, by the way, and this is not even our primary topic, right? Truma, Bikurim, Batal, 100 to 1. Meiser Sheni, Batal, Berov. Batal in a simple majority. Meiser Sheni, always redeem with money that's worth a little bit more than the actual value of the Meiser Sheni. Okay, just interesting. So Meiser Sheni, Batal, Beruba. Ube'eza Meiser Sheni Amru. And I both say, which Meiser Sheni are we talking about? Listen to this, it was fascinating. Which Meiser Sheni are we talking about? B'Meiser She'in Bo Shava Pruta. So we're talking a case of Meiser Sheni that it's not worth Shava Pruta. V'Shenichnas Yerushalayim, it was taken into Yerushalayim v'Yatza, and then it was taken out. Okay, so I both say, a lot happening over here. So I both say, so now, another interesting Meiser Sheni fact. Meiser Sheni can be redeemed, right? Transfer sanctity onto money. But once Meiser Sheni has been taken out of Yerushalayim, you are no longer allowed to redeem it. So once it was inside the city, and you subsequently take it out of the city, you are no longer able to redeem it. It's still Meiser Sheni, right? You can take it back in and eat it, but you can't go ahead and transfer its sanctity onto money. Suppose they take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, "Shenichnas Yerushalayim v'Yatza." So the Gemara says, "Lekaman mefarish delesle takanta lo b'achila v'lo b'chil." Actually, I misspoke. We're going to see that once Meiser Sheni is taken out of Yerushalayim, the Gemara is going to suggest you can't eat it and you can't redeem it. Okay, so now let's go through this. So the Gemara says like this. So Meiser Sheni, suppose number one, it doesn't have Shava Pruta. Number two, it was taken into the walls of Yerushalayim, and number three, it was now removed. Now watch this. Vim isol d'chizkia. Now if Chizkia is correct, le'aved le'd'chizkia, v'necha le'ammaos harishonos. So I will say, so now Chizkia, remember again, I will say, Chizkia always seems to have a remedy, right? What's Chizkia's remedy? His remedy is like this. As long as you have money that you use to redeem Meiser Sheni, I will say what? there's always a cushion in there. So if you have any Meiser Sheni, so let's say, now, like, if you have Meiser that's Pachos Shava Pruta, great. Just redeem that Meiser Sheni onto the cushion money from the original act of redemption. To which the Gemara says, Delo Park. We're talking about a case where I had not previously redeemed any other Meiser Sheni money. I v'nesi meiser de islay v'nitztarfinhu. So I'll say, so go ahead and take meiser, v'nesi meiser de islay, right? So go ahead and bring meiser sheni that is worth a shava pruta, redeem it, and then go ahead and combine this other meiser sheni with it. To which the Gemara says, you're right, d'oraisa v'drabanan lo mitztarfi. You can't combine biblical meiser sheni with rabbinic meiser sheni. Now, what does this mean? Take a quick look at Rashi. First one on Rashi. D'oraisa v'drabanan lo mitztarfi. Litfos pruta zu b'kedushas meiser shama'urav minatora batal barov. So we'll say, now watch this. We'll say, I just want to be clear. We're trying to figure out over here how to go ahead and remedy a mixture of Meiser Sheni, right? I have a mixture of Meiser Sheni that got mixed in with other stuff. How do we deal with this from a redemption perspective? And now the Gemara is making it more complicated. They were talking about what kind of Meiser Sheni got mixed in. It's Meiser Sheni, look, get ready for this, that is Pachos Mishava Pruta, was in Yerushalayim, and was then taken out of Yerushalayim, and got mixed in. So how could I go ahead and redeem this Meiser Sheni? So the Gemara says, why not just bring other Meiser Sheni, right? Go ahead and redeem that, and then redeem the mixed-in Meiser Sheni with that. To which the Gemara says, you can't combine rabbinic and biblical Meiser Sheni. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, "Doraisi d'Rabbanan lo mitztarfi, litvos pruta zu b'kedushas Meiser shama'urav v'natorah batal barov." Now we'll say, this is fascinating. This is really incredible. When you have Meiser Sheni, right, that gets mixed in with something else, Midda Oraisa, on a biblical level, Meiser Sheni is batal barov. True, it's not Meiser Sheni, we'll say. Midda Oraisa, everything is batal barov. Right? Remember again, the Torah says, Acharei Rabim Lahatos. Simple majority is bittul. So therefore, I will say, technically speaking, this Meiser Sheni doesn't really even exist biblically. It only exists rabbinically. Rashi says, Dechsev Acharei Rabim Lahatos, V'Rabbanan hu da'amru heicha diyesh l'matirin lo Libto. Hilchach ein isra meiser bazeh elam midrabanon. Hilchach ein mitzarif imzeh litfos piyono. Nimtza chatzi pruta she'evi nechal be'lo chilo. Aval d'chiski amas harishon kvar nitpesu. So we'll say, so here's the issue. The issue is the meiser sheni that's gotten mixed in, that's only meiser sheni midrabanon. You can't combine that for redemption purposes with meiser sheni d'oraisa. Incredible. So the Gemara says, v'neisi meiser de'islay v'tzefin d'oraisa v'alam sarfin. V'neisi demai. So we'll say, it's fascinating. So why don't you bring demai, right? Bring demai. Now what's demai? Demai itself is, again, questionable status, Meiser Sheni, or questionable status, again, produce. Was it tied, was it not tied? And combine that, use that, essentially redeem that, and go ahead and then redeem the Meiser Sheni mixture along with that. We're concerned that if we let you use demai for this, you're going to come to use vadai produce as well. All right. V'nesi shtei prutos. The Gemara says, all right. Here we go. We'll say again, just to be clear, all we're trying to figure out over here is I have a mixture with Meiser Sheni in it. The Meiser Sheni is Pachos Mishava Pruta. To make things even more complicated, it was taken into Yerushalayim, taken out of Yerushalayim, so now a whole bunch of tzaras with this little mixture over here. So it's just trying to figure out a way to redeem it. So now the Gemara says, okay, V'nesi shtei prutos, v'nechal alayim, so bring two prutos, and what? V'nechalal alayu ma'aseh berpruta umechza, v'nechalal hai al heich yisera. So we'll say, so bring two prutos, right? Go ahead and redeem one batch of ma'aser, right? Ma'aser on one pruta, and now allow the mixture to be redeemed on the other pruta. To which the Gemara says, that doesn't work. I'll tell you why. Mi savrit pruta umechza tafsa shtei prutos, lo pruta tafsa, pruta v'chatzi, pruta lo tafsa. So I'll say, here's the problem with that. The problem with that is, if you go ahead and you redeem Meiser Sheni on a pruta, that works fine. When you then try to redeem another half a pruta on a pruta, that doesn't work. Why, I will say? Half a pruta does not trigger a transactional mechanism. Because less than a pruta, halachically, is nothing. Because it's nothing, I will say you can't redeem a half a pruta on a pruta because there is no mechanism of redemption for something that is pachos mishava pruta. Okay, incredible. So the Gemara says, Hadar Havile Darais of a Dirabanan. So therefore, Rabbi say it goes back to being the case of a Darais Dirabanan. Or Darais Dirabanan Lomet Starfi. I Venaisi Isser. So Rabbi say, so bring a larger coin. So just bring a larger coin and allow on that larger coin for a pruta of Meiser Sheni and the additional amount, of the mixture together to be deconsecrated on that larger coin. We are concerned ultimately again that halacha l'maisa you're going to end up substituting prutos. Okay, so I will say, what's the bottom line over here? The bottom line over here is please be careful and don't let pachos mishava pruta get mixed in with anything because you're going to have a real headache on your hands. I will say, but again, what do we have with us so far? Here's what we have. We have number one, that halacha l'maisa, going back all the way, that you could redeem meiser sheni even on an eroded coin, but you have to use the actual value of the coin, not the face value of the coin. We also know that halacha l'maisa, ultimately again, Meiser Sheni is batal barov, Truma and Bikurim batal in 100 to 1. We also now say that in all seriousness, less than a shava pruta, what do you do with pachos mishava pruta of Meiser Sheni? I say this could be a real case where you redeem your Meiser Sheni and then you realize, I have a little bit left that I didn't redeem. What do I do with it? Now the truth is, it's actually relatively simple according to Chizkiah. Chizkiah says, just redeem that onto already established Meiser Sheni money. How could I do that? I'll tell you could do it. Because I will say in general, and this is very important, when redeeming your Meiser Sheni with money, it turns out, I will say that what's happening, there's really three components to redeeming Meiser Sheni with money. Part one is actual value of the produce. Part two is the chomesh, the fifth. And then I will say part three is whatever that amount is after those two, is you add on some additional amount. Now it's interesting, it doesn't appear that additional amount is quantified. You have right side, but there's always a little bit of a cushion. And interestingly enough, that little bit of a cushion is number one, hashkafically, because you don't do mitzvos in an exact way, you always add on a little bit. And also because I will say, I know that maybe there's some random Meiser Sheni that's anywhere, and they say because I have that cushion, that additional money could be used for Meiser Sheni redemption. Beautiful. Let's go weiter. Now, remember, the Gemara introduced this pretty interesting case of Meiser Sheni that was taken into Yerushalayim and then removed. So the Gemara says, V'shnichnas Yerushalayim v'yatza. So now, interestingly enough, we said that halacha l'maisa, if you have Meiser Sheni that was taken into Yerushalayim and then taken out and then got mixed in, it's batal barov. So the Gemara says, but I don't understand. I don't understand. Just take it back into Yerushalayim. And eat it. Why do you have to start relying on bittul barov? Kishenitma. Because also the case is where the Meiser Sheni got mixed in, and what happened? It became tamei. So I will say, so now because it became tamei, so Rashi says over la'ilei im taruva, so v'yochlana b'Yushalayim. So first I don't understand. So the case is I had Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. I took it out of Yerushalayim. It got mixed up with something. Someone says it's okay. Batal barov. So question number one is just take it back into Yerushalayim and eat it. To which the Gemara says no, it became tamei. It became tamei. Redeem it. V'nifrikei. So Rabbi Lazar says that halacha l'maisa, how do you know that even Meiser Sheni that became tamei, that you could even redeem tamei Meiser Sheni? Amud Beis Rabbi say afilu b'Yerushalayim, and Rabbi say you could do this in Yerushalayim. Rabbi say, now I want to point out something very interesting over here. It's an important halacha. You are allowed to redeem Meiser Sheni onto money only outside of Yerushalayim. Right? The redemption option could only be exercised outside of Yerushalayim. Inside of Yerushalayim, you can't redeem produce onto money. You just got to consume the produce. And again, you don't have to eat it all. You can share it with your friends. But in Yerushalayim itself, you cannot redeem Meiser Sheni onto money. So I will say, now, Rabbi Lazar says there's an exception to that. What's the exception to that? Meiser Sheni Tamei. If my Meiser Sheni becomes Tamei, I'm allowed to redeem it onto money. Now, obviously, when I'm home, I certainly could redeem Meiser Sheni, Tamei Meiser Sheni onto money. Even in Yerushalayim, you could do this. How do you know? The Shnei Amar, Kilo Suchal Seiso, Because the pasuk says, I will say the pasuk says, it's actually talking about over here that if Baruch Hashem you've been benched with a lot of Meiser Sheni, and you can't carry it all to Yerushalayim, Lo Suchal says so, you can't go ahead and carry it, you can redeem it onto money. But Allah says, Ve'in se'es el achila. Se'es doesn't just mean to carry, se'es also means to eat. To eat, Shneimar, Vayisa Masas Me'es Panav. So Allah says to me, what do you see? That you can redeem two types of Meiser Sheni. Two types of Meiser Sheni, right? Either Meiser Sheni that you can't carry because it's too much Baruch Hashem, or Meiser Sheni that you can't eat. They will say, what type of Meiser Sheni can't you eat? What type of Meiser can't you eat? Tell me Meiser Sheni. So they will say, okay, so keep your eye on the ball over here. So what's the case? What do we see before? I have Meiser Sheni. I took it out. It was in Yerushalayim. I brought it to Yerushalayim. I brought it out of Yerushalayim. Then I will say, what happened? When I brought it out, it got mixed up in a mixture. So what's the good news? The good news is, Batal Barov. The Gemara says, why? Why rely on that? Just go ahead and take it back into Yerushalayim. What happened? It became Tameh. So I can't eat in Yerushalayim anyway. The Gemara says, fine, it became Tameh. Redeem it. Redeem the Meiser Sheni. There's a mechanism. Rabbi Lazar says that essentially, Rabbi say again, you can redeem Meiser Sheni either if it's too much to carry, or you're not allowed to eat it because it came Tameh. Not only that, but whereas under normal circumstances, you can't redeem Meiser Sheni once it's arrived in Yerushalayim. If it's Tameh, I will say, is it not so ridiculously exciting to spend the whole day speaking about Yerushalayim on Erev Pesach? If I can't physically be there, at least I'm going to spend the entire shir speaking about my beloved Yerushalayim Mir HaKodesh. It's incredible, Rabbi say. So again, even Meiser Sheni produce, if it's Tameh, you are allowed to redeem it even in Yerushalayim. So I don't understand. Why do you have to rely on Bittul Barov? Just redeem it, take the money back to Yerushalayim, Shalom Yisrael. So I'll say, the Gemara says, Ella, Belakuach, Bekesef Meiser Sheni. Oh, okay, Bosai. So now this is actually really, and we're picking up like a lot of Meiser Sheni information over here. Bosai, what's the case? The case over here is, I had Meiser Sheni at home. I redeemed Meiser Sheni at home with money. I brought the money to Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim, I purchased produce. I will say, now the halacha is, once you purchase Meiser Sheni produce with Meiser Sheni money, you can't now again redeem that bought Meiser Sheni produce onto money. In other words, it's one redemption per customer, and that redemption happens outside of Yerushalayim. The only exception is if it's Tameh food, right? But so the case over here is, I brought Meiser Sheni money, and I bought produce with that money. You can't redeem that produce again. So the Gemara says, so Ella belakuach bekesef Meiser Sheni. To which the Gemara says, but I don't understand. Lakuach bekesef Meiser Sheni nami lifrikei. The truth is, even if something was bought with Meiser Sheni money, you could still go ahead and redeem it. Why this not? Here we go. Halakuach bekesef Meiser Sheni shenitma yifte. So I will say again, apparently Rabbi Lazar is of the opinion, that again, you're right, under normal circumstances, halach l'maisa, if you go ahead and you bring Meiser Sheni money to Yerushalayim, and then you use that money to buy produce, I will say you cannot go ahead and redeem that produce again with money. However, if your produce becomes Tameh, you can. Rabbi Huda, so the Gemara says, Rabbi Huda da Amar Yikaver. No, we're passing Rabbi Huda. What's Rabbi Huda holds that halacha l'maisa? If you have Meiser Sheni produce that becomes Tameh, you can't redeem it. Instead, what do you do? You bury it. Okay. Rabbi Huda, my area yatsa. But if it's Rabbi Huda, we'll say, then why do you have to set up the case as a situation where he took the Meiser Sheni produce out of Yerushalayim? Even if you didn't, even if you didn't go to Yerushalayim, you still have to bury it. In other words, we'll say, what's going on over here? Ella. So I'll say, so again, let's reorient. We're focused on a very simple case, or at least it sounds simple. I have Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. I took it out of Yerushalayim. So Rabbi say again, what did the Gemara say? What's the halacha? The halacha was, right, so nichnas shtayim v'yatsa. So Rabbi say, batal barov. So we're just trying to figure out what's the metzias of the case. To which the Gemara says, Atay Eli Olam B'Tahar. So we'll say, no, we're talking about a case of Meiser Sheni that is Tahar. Or we'll say, so therefore again, I have Meiser Sheni, it's in Yerushalayim, and I took it out. Now, that Meiser Sheni gets mixed up in a mixture. What did the Gemara say? Batal barov. So what's the case? So here we go. Ma yatsa denafal mechitzos. The walls of Yerushalayim fell down. The walls of Yerushalayim fell down. That's the case we're talking about over here. So the Gemara says, what's going on over here? Look at Rashi. Ma yatsa, ma dika amar denafal mechitzos chomus Yerushalayim, v'shuv ein meiser ne'achal sham ad sheyamdu mechitzos, deba'inan lifnei Hashem tochlenu. So we'll say the halacha is like this. There is only an obligation to keep meiser sheni within the confines of Yerushalayim when Yerushalayim has its walls. If Yerushalayim Yirah Kodesh does not have its walls, then halacha l'maisa there is no obligation to eat the meiser sheni in the city. Ubepedia nami lo tikaltu mechitzos miliftos od mishnichlas l'sochos. So I will say, now watch this. Here's the case. The case is where I brought my meiser sheni into Yerushalayim, and then what happened? Then the walls fell down. Ma yatsa denafal mechitzos. V'hamarava. So we'll say now, v'hamarava, mechitza lechol da'araisa, mechitzos liklot d'rabanan. So we'll say, what's the halacha? When there is a mechitza, right? So when the walls stand, so there's a biblical obligation to go ahead and eat meiser sheni within the walls of Yerushalayim. But liklot d'rabanan. What does it mean? We'll say one more Rashi. Mechitza lechol da'araisa, mechitza liklot d'rabanan. Mechitza shenem rabbetorah, lo huskar ela lechol b'socha. So we'll say, now listen to this. The idea over here is that the presence of the walls to eat meiser sheni, that ultimately again is a din d'oraisa. The idea, I will say, that if you go ahead and you remove meiser sheni from the walls, from Yerushalayim, that you can't redeem it anymore, that is a din d'rabanan. That is a din d'rabanan. So we'll say, so now watch this. The rabbis said that if you have meiser sheni in Yerushalayim and now you take it out, that you can't redeem it anymore, that is a din d'rabanan. And the only time that the rabbi said that, when the walls are standing. Lo gazu rabanan. So I'll say ultimately again, when do we say that if you took the meiser sheni out of Yerushalayim, you can't redeem it anymore? That's only when the walls are standing. But if the walls are chas v'shalom no longer standing, then halacha l'maisa, the din doesn't apply. Now both say, if the din doesn't apply, that means that what? The meiser sheni can be redeemed. Therefore, again, the Gemara says, lo plug rabbanan bein istul mechitzos or bein lesnul mechitzos. So I must say, it must be that the rabbis did not distinguish between whether the walls are standing and ultimately, again, the walls are not standing. Look at Rashi. Umishani lo plug rabbanan bein yotzim isochan lenaflu tiklitas mechitzos gazru bistam bein isnu bein lesnu. So we'll say it has to be that halacha l'maisa. The Chazal did not make a distinction. Whether the walls are standing, the walls are not standing, they applied the same halacha to meiser sheni taken out of Yerushalayim. Rav Huna Bar Yehuda Amar Rav Sheshes Chada Katani. In reality, I'm going to say this is one case. What's the case? Let's consolidate this into one case. What's the one case? Meiser sheni she'emo shava pruta shenichnas l'Yerushalayim v'yatza. So Rabbi say, watch this. Rav Huna brings all the cases together. Rav Huna says, no, this is the same case we saw before. Meiser sheni that doesn't have a shava pruta. That is not a shava pruta, right? That was taken into Yerushalayim and then was taken out. So we'll say, what's halacha? It is batal barov. It is batal in a simple majority. So the Gemara says, amai, v'nei hadar v'nei aile v'nechle. But why? Why not just take it back in? To Yerushalayim and go ahead and eat it there? To which the Gemara says, denafal mechitzos. We're talking about a case where the walls fell down. So we'll say, remember, once the walls fall down, there's no din of meiser sheni consumption in Yerushalayim. Because the din of meiser sheni consumption in Yerushalayim is only when the walls are standing. If the walls are not there, then there is no obligation. So I will say, so again, I know this is a lot to take in one day, but let's just go back for a second. So I will say, so now just watch what's happening over here. Rav Sheshes is bringing all of our worlds together, right? And what he's saying, here's the case. I have meiser sheni that is worth less than a pruta. Right? I brought it into Yerushalayim, and now I brought it out of Yerushalayim. And I will say, out of Yerushalayim, what happens? It gets mixed in with a mixture. What's the halacha? Batal barov. Why is it batal barov? Just bring it back into Yerushalayim and eat it. To which the Gemara says, the walls of Yerushalayim fell down. The walls of Yerushalayim fell down. So I will say, the Gemara says, now here's what we know. The din of eating Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim only applies when the walls are standing. So if the walls are not standing, I will say there's no point in bringing the Meiser Sheni back in. So the Gemara says, V'nifreke, so just redeem it. Transfer the sanctity of their Meiser Sheni in the mixture onto coins or onto money. And you know what? Remember again, even though it's worth less than a pruta, and you can't redeem less than a pruta, what can I transfer the sanctity onto? Other Meiser Sheni money. Why? Because we'll say, now I know that what? Meiser Sheni money always has what? Always has a cushion. Mifrikei v'amarava, mechitza v'ha'amarava. Sigmar says, hamarava, mechitza lechol doraisa, mechitza liklot dirabanan. So I will say, the idea over here is, a mechitza for consumption purposes, that ultimately again is a daraisa. Mechitza liklot, I will say, when we say liklot, that halacha l'maisa, that the mechitza, so to speak, absorbs Meiser Sheni, which tells you that again, if the Meiser Sheni is removed from Yerushalayim, ultimately again, it can't be eaten nor can it be redeemed. So that's the Rabbanan. V'chigazer Rabbanan ki isnu lemechitzos. And when did Chazal go ahead and legislate this? Only when the walls stand. Ki lesnu lemechitzos lo gazer Rabbanan. But ultimately again, if there are no mechitzos, even the rabbis did not decree, to which the Gemara says, lo plug Rabbanan. So I will say, this is actually really dramatic. That ultimately, again, lo plug Rabbanan means that Chazal said essentially, once you have Meiser Sheni that's taken to Yerushalayim, even if it's taken, and it's taken out, even if what? Even if there are no walls, you can't redeem that Meiser Sheni. Chazal just made a blanket rule across the board, that once Meiser Sheni is taken into Yerushalayim, and then it's removed, you can't go ahead and redeem it, even if there are no walls. If that's the case, my area in bo shave pruta. If that's the case, then why are you setting this up as a situation of less than a pruta? Afilu yesh bo nami. Even if it has a pruta, halacha l'maisa. Again, I will say, see what's happening. Even if it has a pruta, ultimately, again, you still can't redeem it. I will say, I just want to point out what's happening over here just for a second, right? Midaraisa. The only time there's an obligation to eat Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim is when? When there are walls. Now I will say, Chazal added an additional layer of chumrah over here. What's their chumrah? Their chumrah is, once Meiser Sheni was taken into Yerushalayim, if halacha l'maisa, you then go ahead and remove it, that Meiser Sheni effectively has no remedy. You can't eat it, nor can you redeem it. Now I will say, now what's the gadlus in the din d'Rabbanan? What's incredible about the rabbinic enactment? That's what? It applies when? Whether there are walls or there aren't walls. Which is incredibly dramatic if you think about it. That halacha l'maisa, even if there are no walls of Yerushalayim Yirakodesh, once you bring the Meiser Sheni in and you take it out, you can't redeem it and you can't eat it. Right? So I will say, so why would Chazal add on such a dramatic layer of chumrah? So I'll just point out something amazing. There are two different halachas very quickly, when it comes to Yerushalayim. There are halachas that are zeicher l'churban and zeicher l'mikdash. Two different categories of zichronos. Zeicher l'churban are practices enacted to remind us ultimately again of what we lost. So for example, you leave an amma by amma, a square of your home unfinished. You find this much more prevalent in Eretz Yisrael than in Chutz La'aretz. Or we put ashes on the head of the chassan. Right? Many different practices. Then there are other practices, I will say, that are there to awaken anticipatory pining for Amir Hashem, what will be. So the fact that we take lulav and esrog, right, on all days of Sukkot except Shabbos, right, that's zecher l'mikdash. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted all of these halachas. So it could very well be that what Chazal said like this, is that even when there are no walls of Yerushalayim, we treat it as if there are walls of Yerushalayim. Why? Because I will say a Yid always has to remember and eagerly pine for the walls of Yerushalayim. So even if they're not standing there, you have to be able ultimately to see the walls of Yerushalayim. But even in times where they weren't there, you have to be able to view it as if they are there. So therefore, midrabanan, you took your Meiser Sheni out of Yerushalayim. Ultimately, again, you can't eat it and you can't redeem it. Incredible. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, why are you setting this situation up as pachos mishavar pruta? Even if there was a pruta, The same halacha would apply. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Lo mi bai kamar. Lo mi bai yeshbo dikaltan le mechitzos. Aval imbo ema lo kalti le mechitzos. Kamashma no. It will say, you might have felt like this. Felt like this. That will say, when you have meiser sheni that shava pruta, so in those cases, the walls absorb that meiser sheni. In other words, that's significant meiser sheni. The walls, so to speak, absorb it, and therefore, again, that is subject to the halachos of meiser sheni removal from Yerushalayim. You might have thought that pachos mishaver pruta, what was it? Pachos shaver pruta, maybe it doesn't quote unquote get absorbed by the walls at all. Halacha lemaisa kamash malan, it does. That even pachos mishaver pruta, ultimately the walls absorb it, right? The walls absorb it, and we'll say, what does that mean? That means Rabbanan, if you go ahead and you take that back out, that meiser sheni cannot be consumed, nor can it be redeemed, even if it's less than a shavar pruta. All right, well, so you know what? We'll stop over here for today. Again, tomorrow, Mirat Hashem, we'll get that. We'll see the Rambam on this, because there's a beautiful, beautiful Rambam that goes through all of these halachas. So we'll say, so we'll pull it all together, and we'll see again which parts of this, again, are halacha l'maisen. Specifically, we're going to get to see what's the impact on a lack of walls on meiser sheni. I will say tremendous. And we're going to be doing it in the Beis Medrash. All right, have a great day, everyone.